Now, what do you suppose Russia is trying to achieve in Africa by denigrating the United States and European countries?
Well, it's hard to get inside the head of the Kremlin when it conducts this kind of information warfare. But if I were to imagine their objectives, I think it's a frustration for Russia that the United States, over the last 20 years, as Secretary Blinken said during his trip to Africa, has spent something like $100 billion in health initiatives that have really been probably the most successful programs in history in the health area, the PEPFAR program and others like it, that have saved countless lives for Africans. And the Russians probably find that frustrating, that American health support is so dramatically successful, and they're trying to challenge it and make people question it, even though independent experts know that it's been so successful.
Mr. Rubin, the health initiatives in Africa that the U.S. and other, Western countries have been spearheading there are very critical for the continent. We know what happened during COVID-19 and other epidemics. What kind of propaganda is Russia spreading about that? What do they want to see happen to the health sector in the continent?
Well, this is what's really so dastardly about what the Russians are doing. Normally, the Russian government and the United States have geopolitical debates about the Ukraine war or about, policies in Europe. But in this case, the Russian government, through its intelligence services, are really responsible directly for killing Africans. Think about it. By deterring African citizens and governments from using Western health services, African people, men, women, and children, might not go to the facilities where life saving health services are available. They might not go to get their vaccines, get their health care, because they've been misled into thinking that it's part of some conspiracy theory the Russians have invented. So this isn't just dangerous for U.S. Russia relations. Russia's intelligence services, by doing this, they are showing they don't care about African lives because they are deterring Africans from getting urgently needed health care that everyone knows in Africa has saved lives. And instead, they're making up stories about biological weapons testing and conspiracy theories that they've used in Ukraine and elsewhere. And that's what's such a tragedy about this. It's not just the foreign policy consequences, but it's the lives and health and welfare of individual men, women, and children in Africa are being put at risk by the Russians.
Mr. Rubin, do we have names or organizations of Russia's recruits in Africa, and which countries are they operating from?
Well, we do know that a man named Artem Karayev is the leader of the African initiative. He's called the chief editor. This is a guy who, previously worked in Latvia, helping a member of parliament avoid, getting kicked out of the country and stuff like that. You can imagine what his real job is. And what he's doing is hiring local individuals, some of whom come from the Prigozhin enterprise, which has brought such chaos to West Africa and such damage to the people of Africa. And they're collecting these nefarious characters to try to persuade Africans to not get needed health care. Think of how monstrous a disinformation campaign this is. This isn't just one of these war and peace things between the United States and Russia. This is something that's costing lives for Africans, and I certainly hope that everyone who is made aware of this. What we're doing this for is we're trying to inoculate the journalists, the governments, the people of Africa to a Russian disinformation campaign that would prevent people from getting their needed medical service.
Has the United States notified any of these countries' leaders on what's happening, and do you have any reactions from there?
Well, you can be sure that we have been working closely with our African partners throughout the region, and we know that we are operating at a very, very early stage We got some very, very special information here that allowed us to expose Russia's intelligence services. And we are sharing that information with our partners. And we're doing it very, very early because we are hoping that by coming out with this information so early, that we will prevent the disinformation campaign from gaining traction, that will prevent it from spreading across the region. If Russia gets its way, they're hoping that dozens of African countries will not use Western healthcare, will not benefit from these hundreds of billions of dollars the United States and Western countries and private individuals have been spending to save African lives. And if we get this early, if we inoculate the people, the journalists, and others to at least raise the question when they see these conspiracy stories, where did it come from? Is this from the Russians? Does this have a made in the Kremlin stamp on it? And we hope that it will avoid the damage that would otherwise be done.